My name is Alexis Rodriguez from the LGBTQ History Museum of Central Florida, and I'm here interviewing Willie Tillmon on July 11, 2020, and recording at Parliament House in Orlando as part of the museum's project in capturing the oral history of Florida's LGBTQ community through drag performers. Willie, or known on stage as Geraldine Jones, has been a foundation to Orlando's drag queen scene and has been performing since the 1970s. Seen not only in the Footlight Theater and abroad, Jones' legacy of influence has become even more apparent to the subsequent generations of drag performers, to which brings us here today. Willie, could you start us off by telling a little bit about yourself, such as your childhood and your life?
Wow, that's a long way to start. Okay, I'm an old man of 77. I was born in 1943. I went to and attended an all-black high school, believe it or not, Jones High School here in Orlando. And the times were great. I finished high school in '62. I had passed 3 auditions to go to the Army Field Band in Washington, and I did. I spent 12 years in the military. I made the NATO Music Festival in Europe 3 times. I won the All-Army Entertainment Contest by writing a halftime show for them. After all those years of running all around the place, back in this country, I was in Washington in 1969. I went from DC to Fort Sill, Oklahoma once a month for the celebration of Fort Sill's 100th anniversary. It was the first time, I was loaned out to the Lawton Philharmonic Orchestra like a piece of furniture, and it was the first time that they performed the 1812 Overture using 4 military artillery howitzers outside. I did all of this, and when I finally had enough, I said in 1972, I said I had enough. When anything you like turns into a job, it's time to leave. And so I got out, and I went back to Europe, and I stayed for about 2 years, and I just ran all over the place because I never had time to run around and just be irresponsible. I came back to this country by way of LA, Hollywood, California. I went over, this is great, I went over one Easter weekend, and I woke up, it was Halloween. But it was nice. I learned an awful lot. A lot of people around there that was in theater and show business. I learned an awful lot from these guys that work costuming shops and all of this, which I had an interest in, because costumes and history and music history sort of goes hand in hand, so it was rather easy for me. I came to Orlando, and then this was like stepping back into a time machine. Compared to LA, this was really backwards. You had no bars that were open on Sunday. The only place I could find to go was a place they called the Palace that was out on Humphreys. And that's when I met Paul. I met Paul and Miss Cherry. There were 2 performers there. They were the only people that I could talk to that I seemed to have anything in common with. And you know, we all became good friends. I got a job as a waiter at the Sheraton out by Disney, and I worked there. And then I would run around with P enough that before Bill Miller and them ever met Paul, they had a bar downtown called the Diamond Head, and I would go in it, and it was a comic in there named Mad Hatter from Texas. Hatter and I became good friends. Had to put on a production of Hello Dolly, I recalled, and I remember turning around being one of her backup dancers. It was something very, very different. But you know, as far as dancing was concerned, dancing is just like counting numbers. If you can count, you can dance. And I did that, and Paul came over for that Christmas. The last Christmas that the Diamond Head was open. And Paul and I was paired up to be partners in that big opening production. At that time, Laura Del Mar was the biggie thing. She had all the clothes and everything else, and pardon me for saying it, and I'll say it, and all the attitude to go with it. Laura and I was like fire and water. Lori would sit and make a nice little snubby comment, and I would chew her right up. That was a good military part of me. Even to this day, when they celebrated my 75th birthday a couple of years ago in here, we were sitting in the dressing room in here, and I looked at Lori. Lori went on before I did, and I made a comment to Lori, and Darcel and the rest of the room looked at me. I said, Lori, you're going on before me. Don't go out there and be too good. I don't want to sweat. But, you know, everything comes around. To sum up my life, that's about the most important parts of it. You know, I've been around here all these years. Plus, I was picked the very, very first time I went to Miami to help them run Miss Florida National. And I went from Miss Florida National to helping them run Miss Florida. And all of a sudden they found out that I was pretty good at handling people backstage for the simple reason of I've experienced both sides of that. I know what it feels like to be in the audience. I know what it feels like to be out there on stage. I know what it takes to get everything moving. The audience see only one part of it. They just see people there and, oh, this is fine. They really don't know the hard part of keeping things moving, making certain people are where they're supposed to be. And on a major pageant, everything is strictly timing. You rent a room, you rent it for a certain amount of time, props and all of this, all the time, and you learn how to get things on and off. You make a few enemies, but that isn't that important because, you know, it's fly-by-night things. If the people are really that dedicated, they'll come back the next year and you're all right. You know, you're all right with them. They learn your habits, what you will and will not do and will not take. And they also learn their habits.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your combat experience and how did it affect you?
That's a hoot. We will go. I went from music school, and my first thing out of graduating music school in Washington, I had never been on an airplane, and my first trip was across country. That was something to think about. I went from Washington to San Francisco, and I played on a boat from San Francisco to Hawaii, to Japan, to Okinawa, to Korea. I won't go on a cruise ship now for nothing. You fly there. I spent 30 days on a ship. I was everywhere all around the place, put it this way, even down in the engine room. Everywhere it said don't go, they gave up on me. They let me just walk in, and I was full of questions. I spent time with the 1st Division Band that was in, right in, well, you won't say Seoul, Korea, it's outside of Seoul, Korea. That 1st Cavalry patch that you saw that was in Nam, I'm a member of that bunch. They went from Korea to Nam. I zipped through Saigon in 1964, before you had all those many Americans there and everything else. I was a little bit afraid. Flying into Saigon was a real hoot because I had long dreamed, okay, remember this was my first overseas trip on a plane then. I figured the plane was going to crash and I was going to survive the crash in the water and the shark was going to eat me. I know that was stupid. But wait, when we got to Saigon, it was even worse. We were preparing to land and they were shelling the airfield. And then I said, okay, you're not going to get eaten by a shark. You're going to get shot out of the plane. I went there. I went back again. I flew back again to Nam in 1968 with the Bob Hope Troop doing one of their big offenses there. It's one thing to run around in a combat uniform playing an instrument and carrying a .45. Took a little bit of thought about that. Right now to this day, I can be home and I hear helicopters and I can tell you the difference in a helicopter and a military chopper and a civilian chopper. I know the sound. I know the sound. Funny little something about me also, your big fireworks that you have, I hate the smell of gunpowder. it's like artillery shells, far, far off. I mean, even to this day, you know, I know it's a peaceful something and all of that. As far as relating to people, don't ask, don't tell didn't exist because you got kicked out. You learned how to, remember, I was a kid when I went in there, so I really, really didn't know who I was. So they turned around and they made me the nice little macho man as you want to be. And I went along with it. Pardon me, even to running out with the boys and women. Okay, you do this, no big thing. That's over. But later on, I began to, you know, you begin to realize your own feelings inside your own head. You know, to thine own self be true. And it's like I said, this was a helping something that helped me turn around later on, aside from the promotion thing and getting out. Because first of all, I had been promoted as high as I was going to get without waiting for 4 more years to get a waiver just to get promoted again. And that would be like standing still. And I was just over it, combining with a lot of other things, you know, feelings in my head. It's time you got out of here and found out who you really were. And that's what I did.
So, what was the social climate like during the 1970s, 80s, and 90s as a gay man and as a drag performer?
At first, it was only, well, when Bill moved here, it was Parliament House, and it was the odds and ends out on Lee Road in Edgewater. That was small. They didn't really count the odds and ends that much because it was quite a distance away. When Southern Nights switched over, that used to be Evil People in the Other Door, and they turned it into Southern Nights, it became a nice little something because Bill and Michael and them had made a little rule, first of all, that we could not perform in the same town. If you worked into this bar, you worked exclusively to this bar, and so on, etc. And it took a little while for them to turn around and see that we raised enough of a stink with them that Michael finally turned around and agreed that he didn't care where we worked at as long as we could get back and make his show. So we would do his 10 o'clock show here, hop on Robinson, run all the way out to Bumby, and make it in there in time. We had them schedule Southern Night show later, 10:30, 10:45. We'd be there, and immediately would run right back. So it was a nice thing for both bars because the crowd would run right there, run right back, run back there, and that's how the nights went. The thing that they had with the police at the little area of time that you know, you had to have a certain amount of men's clothing and so on, etc. For some people, that was a hard thing. For me, it never was because, put it this way, in between shows, I walked around in my own clothes. And they used to would ask me, why do you do this? And I said, because I'm comfortable. My legs are cold in a dress. I don't even know how in the hell I began to even wear a dress. But it was way, way easier. I said, I know who I am. Several years later, a couple of friends of mine, well, they're friends now, came through here. Hot Chocolate, for example. And Chocolate judged Miss Florida. Chocolate was here and she looked at me in between shows to do that. And she went back to her gig out in LA, and later on at Miss Florida, Chocolate was sitting up there judging it, and Chocolate was wearing an old Marines jacket and blue jeans with a painted face. The guy walked backstage, it took him 5 minutes, bam, into a dress, some hair, bam, perfect, perfect. He said, you taught me that. I said, I taught you? He said, I found out I'm more comfortable in my own clothes. So, you know, with some of us, you know, this is a little pet peeve that I've always found out now. As old as I am right now, I don't walk around here in a dress. I mean, you know, only if they, okay, we're going to do curtain call, you need to wear, okay, whatever. But the people begin to change up because the gays begin to change up. We begin to make them feel more comfortable. When we had the Bottle Club, for example, down by, I think that's 32nd Street, back down the trail, everybody from all the bars, and this is the ladies that work at the strip clubs and all of this, we had a show down there. Our show was like at about 3:30 or 4 in the morning. It was a bottle club. You brought your own bottle. You paid for your backup juices and stuff there, and everybody was welcome. So that began to break the thing down. You had a very mixed crowd of people. You had people from all the bars and everywhere else, which, number one, they knew where they were coming at when they got there for this town. Whereas in Miami and Lauderdale, they had been doing it. We were behind, but we caught up. It was a very, very neutral place that everybody could come to. Now, you see more ladies coming here than men off and on, because the ladies normally say, well, they don't feel threatened. Well, of course not, you won't feel threatened. I mean, you're here, this is basically a men's club or a lesbian's club or whatever you want to call it. If you get lucky, put it this way, that you hook up with somebody, well, it's good for you. But all the tension sort of little by little begin to go away. And this is worldwide and everything. It's like you don't want to sleep with every man that you run around with in life. The same way, or every woman, so the same thing. You aren't that sexual threat. First of all, you learn how to talk to people and see what they have to offer inside their heads and all of this. I don't have to sleep with you to be a good friend with you.
Okay. So, what were some differences that you noticed between the LGBT people of color in comparison to LGBTQ white people?
Years ago, it was a panel before the nice little community got all these little LGBT everything started. And I never will forget it. They asked Paul to be there, and they asked Paige King to be there to address this little panel. Paul turned around and told me to go. Paul said, it's better if you go. Paul said, I know how your head thinks and how you are. Okay, I said, no problem. So Paige and I, Paige is a woman all the time, and I'm not. And of course, we thought it was a real hoot. And the panel of people talking to us, they were all, pardon the pun, white, and they were asking us same questions like you just asked me. And we were explaining, they said, first of all, you two are different. I said, no, we aren't. I said, we're quite alike. I said, just the only difference is physically, this is what Paige prefers, and this is what I prefer. And then they were mentioning how nice and how the gay community had accepted us. And we both agreed. We said, no, you haven't. And the faces cracked all over the place. And Paige said, get him, Willie. And I explained it. I said, had we not been entertainers, most of you would not even speak to us. I said, when we come off that stage, you walk up there, when we come off that stage and walk around through this audience off and on, some of you, part of you are okay. The other part of you, if your partners tend to get too friendly, I said, you're as bad as any other homophobe there is going. I said, you pick and you choose your colors. I said, in a mob of people that are discriminated against, you dare discriminate against each other in your own circle. And this is that. Be it white, black, Latino, and we all know this, but you can't see it because, the whole big thing is you have to walk in somebody else's shoes. I mean, just take the nice little line out of To Kill a Mockingbird. Sometimes you never really understand a person until you begin to see things from his point of view. And this is the same thing that's going on here today, and it's rather amazing. Things have flared up, and all of a sudden you've looked at a whole big crowd of people, very mixed. You're finally getting around to understanding things from the other point of view now. Because you were just as quick to use that N-word out of anger and jealousy, and I'm speaking straight, and most people that know me put it this way, I will call you a awful name, boy. For every name you guys had for us, we got one for you. And you never thought about that, or how dare you call me that? Dare I? But you were just as bad. A whole group of people. Right now, you know, the trannies, that's another something. You don't understand them. That's the same as you. They're no different.
So in terms of like interracial relationships and friendships, was that prominent still? I mean,
well,
was it like common?
You have the yes and no. You have the oh God, what would I call it? You have your people that are out there for the publicity. Oh yeah, I'm a good friend of yours. Really? I don't even know you. It's off and on. Remember before the other day I was talking to you, I said back in the day, when all the kids come into the bars, we knew half of each other. We knew them by name. Your people don't know them. You don't know each other. You're just out here in your new Gucci shirt and your new fabulous haircut. And I'm saying, and you took your whole week's salary for that. I go home and look in your refrigerator, you got ice. But you know, this is how you guys are. You don't take time to know each other. You're just all caught up in yourselves. Or you're on your phones. You forgot how to communicate with people. People are people, not you have to talk. And your generation has lost that. Soon you'll forget how to talk, just like Planet of the Apes.
Okay, so in terms of the LGBTQ people during this time period, what were some clues that helped you identify each other, like dress, body language, etc.?
Not so much that, and I can hop back to the military for this. I knew a couple of Medal of Honor winners. These guys would come over to the band after concert and all of this, and would chit chat with people, and would talk to me off and on, and put it this way, my feelings and their feelings toward me, and put it this way, this is even if just having a drink in the bar. You feel certain things for certain people that are friendly toward you. I mean, of course, I had a colonel's wife that, Mrs. Monkeller, she was a hoot. They'd do a reception, and this woman would leave her husband. This guy was about as tall as I was, and it would remind you of a midget John Wayne. Walk around with his swagger stick and everything else. And his wife would come over at one of their receptions and stand by me and say, Mr. Tillmon, she said, I'll be so damn happy when he retires. I'm so tired of this bullshit. But this is how she was, and she was quite good. And he was a very, very nice man. I mean, he was always extra friendly to me, and I would just look at him and say, you're about as gay as I don't know what. And I, you know, this is in my head. I had no proof. Other people in the military I met, I had feelings for. They were friendly, but due to the situations and etc., my discipline, their discipline, you had too much to lose. I had a security clearance. Had too much to lose. Later on in life, remember, I was much older than you guys when I came out. That was the easiest thing to turn around and figure out, though. My feelings toward other people and other people. When I met them, I wanted to look at them and say, son, what little game are you playing up here? I see it in the bars right now. When Locke's bartending a lot, I'll stand up there and somebody else stand up there and da-da-da-da-da start talking. And I'll say, Locke, give them a drink. And then they'll keep on and on and on and on. And pardon my rudeness, I said, I got you a drink. You can go now. It's not being rude, but this is just feelings. You got, you know, you're, pardon me, they call it gaydar, whatever. I call it plain old common horse sense. People that you have a second feeling for when they're around you, you're normally right. You're normally right. You know, that's how you approach being close to them. They could be the biggest, manliest looking man in the whole building there, and without drag you anytime. But you know, you're normally right. It's just with me, it's just a feeling. And I've been around so many musicians and actors that, you know, their feelings are, in order to do drag, you have to be able to put your feelings right out there in the open. In order to play in an orchestra, you got one conductor and you got 150 people that you all got to play as one. You got to think as one. And it's been my discipline all my life. So it isn't really hard for me. I think it's one more. To rely on those secondary feelings, you get, normally you're right. Normally you're right. I don't know if you can relate to that, but normally you're right. You're too young, you don't know.
So, I want to transition to specific questions about your experience and perception about drag performances. So, you have a drag persona known as Geraldine Jones. Can you please tell me a bit about this persona, where it came from, and...
Easiest thing in the world. Geraldine Jones was a character that a comic, his name was Flip Wilson, invented. Geraldine Jones was a sassy black woman. Put it this way, he was a man in a dress. He created that alter ego, a sassy woman. She took no crap. I found out that I liked this guy. I had seen, he got out of the Air Force. He was a comic, and he started on this. He got an Emmy. He had his own show. And Paul and I were talking one day about his show and all of this, and Pete looked at me. He said, "Do you really know his show?" I said, "I know about everything he's ever done." Paul said, "I bet you could do him." And it was just an idea. And I took Rita Beads at the time, and myself, I had the recording, I taught a little skit, and it took me 5 minutes to turn into Geraldine. All it took was some eyelashes, some lipstick, a wig, and a dress. He was a man in a dress. And later on, when he had his TV show, he had all sorts of guests on there. Bing Crosby, Ray Charles, and all of this. And he was a comic. He had all the Miss Black Americas on there, and I will never forget it. Back in the 70s, right over Sunset Boulevard, it was a big poster of him up in an orange fringe dress that said, "Don't fight the feeling." Way before RuPaul. He was a man in a dress, not painted and tucked and all of this. And he had all these other characters too. He had her, he had Reverend Leroy, and all these characters, and these are good characters. I looked at it and I liked it. I freaked out when I got a video of him, and they showed me a video of myself in here doing one of the skits. He had it was a theater in the round that he worked in, and he would come through the audience. And I would do one of his skits, and I'd come right through that audience, and I knew exactly how long it took me to get down and get on that stage and all of this. And I looked at one of his videos, and I looked at me doing the same thing, and it sort of shocked me. I had every move that guy had down pat. I didn't think about it, but I had every move though. He was a big influence.
So, what are some pageants that you have participated in, and what are some awards and titles that you received?
I have, God, what was the silly one that I got here in Orlando?
Hogtown Hussy?
That was Gainesville. Hogtown Hussy was Gainesville.
$1.
That's $1.69 here. That was all at $2. Those are comedy ones. The Hogtown Hussy one in Gainesville was a hoot. That's the first time I met Darcel. I was a person from out of town that they paid no attention to, and I wiped them out. I spent $2 and won $500. After those, the big ones, let me see, I got the Entertainment Award from here, from Orlando, from the P House. I have that one. I have the one from Lifetime Achievement Award from Comedy Queen. I have the Heart of Florida Lifetime Achievement Award. I also have, let me see, I'm an honorary Miss Florida at Large, and I picked up their Lifetime Achievement Award from Miss Florida back in December. something that they don't really hand out that often. I think they've only handed that stupid thing out about 3 times, and that pageant's about 43 years old. It's for me being so nice and understanding.
All right, so now to conclude, in what ways do you feel drag performance has evolved from your initial contact, and what are some significant changes you have witnessed over time within the LGBTQ community and drag performance?
Well, compared to a certain TV show that they think this is wonderful, that you filmed this in 8 weeks and this is just great, a real pageant, you turn around and say, sweetheart, you got 1 night to get this together. And everything comes down to practice and entertaining, and everything is evolving. You have, it's one thing to be winner off of a TV show, and I'll call it out, and then you get these same people here as guests, and they're horrid. And I will call it out, I can call some names too, but I won't do that. They're horrid. And the other with children that you see, there are a lot of very, very, very good people in this business. It's a lot of good people still alive that work to make this business what it is today. It's a lot of new people in here that they need to really learn how to work a little bit harder. You don't really have to rely, it isn't really relying on the costume as much. It's, I will put it this way, it's 10% costuming, it's 90% talent in you. Don't ever forget that. You can have the best makeup artist, the best outfit, and you'll still stink. It's come along, but then again, some of the other ones that I look at, they go from one extreme to the other. Some begin to really, really look like circus clowns. And they say, she's wonderful, and I try and look at things with an open mind, and I don't see it. But then again, keep on living, you'll see how well they evolve, and you'll see how well some of them change up. Some of the smart ones will change up and they'll be okay. The other ones will just be like, just like everything else, they'll fade away. They just fade in the background.
Do you have anything that you would like to say to the young generation or those that will come along in the future?
The oldest statement going, you know, if you don't learn from the past, you're destined to repeat it. But if you don't know your past, you have to turn around and look back. My generation of people always turned around and took time. And I believe it or not, it's just like Obama said, when you get to the door and you step through that door, reach back and pull somebody else through there with you. I think of quite a few people I've turned around and helped and talked to before. And turned around and looked up at them later on and just laughed. Robert Martin, Chantel Roche. Robert was a little special thing. When Robert first met me, Robert was 23. I was doing their amateur talent shop there. Robert's boyfriend told Robert I must have blocked him pretty much because he said, "You're nice to Robert." And all the years Robert's been a friend of mine, I talked to Robert. He was running back and forth to Miss America. Robert and I would do a gig in Daytona, and I would go through question and answers with him on the drive there and back all the time. So later on, when Robert got in these contests, Robert was always fine in interview and Q&A. Because as Robert put it wasn't too much that I hadn't phoned at him. And he could always think on his feet. Eventually Robert won Continental Elite, which he deserved to win. And of course the main category I never even worried about him was, you know, interview. Most of your pardon me, most of your young impersonators, they might look good, etc. They can't answer a question. They can't interview for a job. The minds just go blank. And on stage in Q&A, I just stand up and I just sort of shake my head backstage. I said, remember the secret to it all. You don't have to answer a question until you open your mouth. gather your thoughts. When you open your mouth, knowing within the first 15 to 20 seconds you've answered the question, and it's thank you and good night, not turn into a run-on sentence. The further and further you get away from here, there, you've lost it.
Is there anything else that you would like to say or discuss?
Nah, thank you guys for dragging an old geezer in here for this.
Thank you, Willie, for your time here with us today. The LGBTQ History Museum of Central Florida and I are greatly appreciative of the amount of information you provided in order to add to this reservoir of LGBTQ history. Thank you.
You're welcome.